Finding and improving your gear is a huge part of the Diablo franchise, and in this video I wanna see how fast I can get geared in every Diablo game. I was recently watching the YouTuber George and his videos where he does fun and unexpected speedrunning challenges in Nintendo games. I thought these videos were a lot of fun, so I thought to myself, how can I make something similar in the Diablo franchise and how can I make it about loot? So let's go ahead and find out, because even if you're saving the world, it's just not appropriate to be walking around in your underwear. The rules for this challenge are simple. The timer starts when I click to enter a new game and it stops once I have equipped every gear slot. In addition, I must play as the barbarian or warrior in all games. So let's begin where it all started, with the original Diablo. I created a brand new warrior and spawned right into Tristram. There are 7 gear slots in this game, 3 of which are jewelry. I'm not very familiar with this game at all, so I didn't really know what to expect in terms of gearing or how long it would take to do this challenge. One thing that you'll notice right away is that there's no running in this game, but you walk faster in some directions than others. Weird. Diablo I is basically one big dungeon where you go deeper and deeper, slaying demons and collecting loot along the way until finally facing off against Diablo himself. So I headed straight into the first level and started looking for loot. And it wasn't long before I found my first piece of gear. This cloak together with the sword and shield that I started with put me at 3 pieces of gear. Diablo I is not an easy game, and right from the start you get put in dangerous situations all the time, so I made sure to use the environment to my advantage whenever I could. A little bit over 16 minutes in, I found my next piece of gear. After equipping this helm, I was now only missing the 3 pieces of jewelry, which would prove to be a bit of a challenge. And speaking of challenges, I ran into this absolute icon of the Diablo franchise.
Fresh meat.
I guess difficult boss battles used to look a bit different back then. After 30 seconds of slapping each other, the butcher finally goes down.
The spirits of the dead are now avenged.
And he even dropped my first Diablo I unique. This seems kind of good, but it's two-handed and I've come to rely heavily on my shield to survive. While going back to Tristram after having defeated the butcher, I discovered that Griswold will occasionally have rings for sale. I can't afford even one right now, but it's good to know for the future, because that means that if I don't find one naturally, at least I can sell stuff and buy one. 25 minutes and a few dungeon levels later, I had my next bit of progress. While fighting some skeletons, I heard a familiar sound. After taking some time to clear out the remaining enemies, I went back to pick up the amulet. I was now only 2 rings away from completing the challenge, and I knew I could buy those in town if I only had enough gold. And luckily my inventory was full of books and spell scrolls which sell for quite a bit of gold, so I headed back to Tristram again to sell everything to Adria. I was now sitting at little over 10,000 gold, which should be enough to buy 2 rings from Griswold. The only issue was, he didn't have any for sale. But in Diablo I you can force Griswold to refresh his inventory by creating a new game with the same character. So I did that for about 5 minutes before I managed to buy my first ring from him. And then a few minutes later I bought my second ring, and I was done. Since I have so little previous experience with this game, I don't know if this is a fast or slow time, if I got lucky or unlucky, but at least we're done with Diablo I and on to the next game. Diablo II is one of my favorite games of all time. It might be the game I've spent the most amount of hours in over the years, and it's easily the one from the Diablo franchise that I'm most familiar with. So I had really high expectations going into this that I would finish this in a short amount of time. Diablo II adds a bunch of different gear compared to the previous game, and in this game we have a total of 10 gear slots to fill. I expect jewelry to be the hardest part to find once again, but to be honest you can find both rings and amulet quite early in Diablo II, so I'm not particularly worried about any gear slot. Unless, of course, we get hit by some unlucky RNG. Not even a minute in, I found my first piece of gear in a pair of boots. And then, a little bit over 2 minutes in, I found a magical ring. See, I told you jewelry wouldn't be a problem in this game. Within minutes I had plenty of more gear drop. The items themselves are unexciting to say the least, but progress is progress. Starting with a pair of crude leather gloves, which was then followed by a cap with 2 sockets, and shortly after a damaged quilted armor. Like I said, progress is progress. 5.5 minutes in, I found my second magical ring. I sold the rest of my loot for gold and went to Charcy to buy any old belt to fill out the gear slot. Now, let's pause for a bit. I just want to highlight that 8 minutes and 40 seconds in, I'm almost completely geared and I'm only missing the amulet to finish the challenge. But I still need to get a hold of one somehow. You can gamble amulets from Guide, but it's quite expensive. The asking price for an amulet is 63,000 gold, regardless of your level. And I'm currently sitting at 600, so let's continue adventuring for now. I visited the ruins of Tristram and saved the Arcane. Tristram always contains several packs of champion and unique monsters, so I stuck around for a bit and cleared the area of enemies for even more loot. After selling all of my loot, I was up to about 12,000 gold, which is a big increase from 600 but still far away from 63,000, so the adventuring continues. I decided that the tower would be a good place to go next. The tower contains a lot of champion and unique boss packs, and the final level has a bunch of gold on the floor as well as the countess as a final prize. After selling the loot from my first trip to the tower, I had more than doubled my gold. I still hadn't found an amulet, but I was closing in on 30,000 gold, which meant I was almost halfway to being able to buy one from Guide. So I decided to keep running the tower until I found an amulet or enough gold to be able to gamble one. It took a few tower runs and a lot of junk sold to Akara, but finally I was able to scrape together enough gold to be able to gamble an amulet. The amulet alone took me almost 50 minutes to get, so with a sigh of relief I stopped the timer just before the 1 hour mark as I was fully geared in Diablo II. This time could have been so much faster, but let's not dwell on that now and instead go ahead and move on to the next game. Next up is Diablo III. I spawn right into the action and fight some zombies. Whoa, I had forgotten how much oomph there is behind the attacks in this game even for a level 1 character. I wonder what the endgame looks like these days. Holy sh! In Diablo III there are gear slots for pants, bracers and shoulders in addition to all the gear slots from Diablo II, which means there are 13 gear slots in total to fill. I assumed that jewelry would be the hardest to find once again, but I also recall vendors selling jewelry in town for much more reasonable prices than in Diablo 2, so I was optimistic, and I quickly started filling the first gear slots. First a pair of pants as soon as I left New Tristram, shortly followed by a pair of gloves. A zombie in a cellar dropped me a pair of boots. And then Captain Rumford gave me a belt as a reward for finishing the first quest. Smooth sailing so far. A little bit later, while investigating the cathedral, I had my next bit of progress. After smashing a group of zombies up in the air, I found some bracers from a dead villager. A bit further down in the cathedral, I rescued Deckard Cain from a big yellow skeleton, which dropped a magic helm for me for my troubles. 15 minutes in, I was able to buy a couple of magic rings from a merchant in town. I couldn't remember if he could also sell amulets or not, so I made a mental note to revisit him later just to check, and continued on the main quest line. Next, I helped the town's blacksmith get rid of his wife. It makes more sense in the context of the story, trust me. It didn't help me progress in the challenge, but she did drop my first piece of legendary loot, and that's always an awesome feeling. Going for over 22 minutes without finding any chest armor at all was quite unexpected, but 22 minutes in I finally found one in a stone vault. A while later I went back to check on the merchant who sold me my rings, and he did have amulets for sale this time, and for a very reasonable price. Now I was only missing one piece of gear to finish the challenge, and that was some shoulder armor. I checked all the merchants in town, but no one had any for sale. I also paid the blacksmith a visit, and while he could craft some for me, they had a required level of 19, and I was only level 11, so I had no choice but to continue adventuring, and it wasn't until just before the 1 hour mark that I finally found some shoulder armor while doing the Scoundrels questline. So once again, after a fast start, I clocked in at around 1 hour to get geared in another Diablo game, but that trend is soon about to be broken. Diablo Immortal is first and foremost a mobile game, but my phone doesn't run Diablo Immortal, so I'll have to play the PC version. This game is full of in-game purchases like loot chests and premium battle passes, but I will not be spending any money to complete this challenge. Besides, it's just a mobile game, so this should be over quickly. After finishing a tutorial section and beating a mini-boss, I unlocked my inventory and found my first piece of gear, a shoulder pad. There are 13 gear slots in this game as well. Something new with this game is that you start with absolutely nothing, but I quickly started to populate my inventory with gear. First, I found a sword, which is a main hand weapon. From the very next pack of monsters, I found another piece of gear, a chest armor. Wait, make that 2 chest armors. Spiders kept dropping gear for me, and this time a pair of pants. While hitting level 5, I found my first offhand weapon. So when reaching the first town about 5 minutes in, I had already acquired 5 pieces of gear. Things would slow down significantly from here, but I kept going and progressing the story as fast as I could. I guess I did find a belt from a chest in the woods shortly after leaving the first town, but after that it was a long time before I could fill another gear slot. It wasn't until 44 minutes in at level 19 that I found my first helm. Having only filled 7 out of 13 gear slots at the 45-minute mark gave me a hint that this one might not be as fast as I thought it would be. At the 1 hour mark I completed my first rift dungeon and was rewarded with a new type of gear, a pair of boots. Shortly after finding the boots, I took a break and continued on the next day, and upon killing the first spider enemy I was rewarded with a ring as a first kill of the day bonus. To be honest, half of the time I don't know what's going on with all these rewards that you claim in various different menus or that the game throws at you, but I'm not complaining since it was a very welcome bit of progress. The beginning of the second day continued to be nice to me as just 10 minutes later I finally found a pair of gloves. But after this I would hit a bit of a rough patch and not find anything new for quite some time. It wasn't until 1 hour and 40 minutes later that I found a new piece of gear, when I got a simple charm as a reward for claiming something in the menus. I was happy to finally have a bit of progress, but to my surprise the charm had a required level of 56. At this point I started thinking, what even are charms anyway, and I did a quick Google search to find out more. Oh, I guess I'm gonna be playing Diablo Immortal for a while. But hey, since I'm gonna have to level to 56 anyway, at least now I don't have to feel bad that I hadn't found another ring or an amulet yet. Well, there's a lot of grinding to be done, so let's get going. But shortly after my realization that I was going to be trapped in this grind, I found my second ring at level 37. And only a few minutes later I also found my first amulet. So now the only thing left to do was to grind another 19 levels to complete the challenge. So let's slap on some pumping music and get to grinding. And finally, after receiving a big chunk of experience after completing a quest, I hit level 56 and equipped the final gear slot. 7 hours! I am quite done with Diablo Immortal for now. I might revisit it in the future on mobile, but as a PC game. And finally, Diablo IV. The game hasn't released yet as of this recording, so the following gameplay is from the open beta. Just something to keep in mind if something looks odd compared to the full release. I will also cut this a bit short to make sure I keep it as spoiler free as possible. There are 12 different gear slots in this game for the Barbarian, including 4 different weapon slots. That's a lot, but luckily we start with 7 pieces of gear, including all weapon types, when we spawn into the game. I had no idea what to expect from this one in terms of time or what's rare, so let's just get into it. My first find was a pair of gloves from a skeleton a few minutes after starting. Since I started with so many pieces of gear equipped already, I was not getting the early burst of progress I had become used to from the other games. Once I reached the first town, I did find a couple of rings at a merchant. I couldn't equip them yet as they required level 10, but I thought I might as well buy them just in case I wouldn't find any earlier than that. I also equipped an amulet from my inventory. I found the amulet a little bit earlier, but I chose not to include that due to possible spoilers. Some 20 minutes later, I found my first helm from a chest. Now all that was left to finish the challenge was the rings. I still hadn't found any except the ones I bought from the merchant earlier. I did check with a merchant in another town, but those also required level 10. So to grind some experience, I completed some quests and slayed some monsters, and just before the hour mark I hit level 10. I equipped the 2 rings from earlier and I was done with Diablo IV and the challenge as a whole. That's a fully equipped character in every Diablo game. This was a very fun challenge to do, but the gear itself does kind of suck. In this video I go heavy on the loot farming and gear up a character from nothing to some real proper gear in Diablo II Resurrected. You should check it out.